The smell of antiseptic and burnt coffee never left the VA halls. It just settled deeper with time. The fluorescent lights hummed above, a single offbeat note somewhere down the corridor giving the illusion that even electricity was tired. I adjusted the badge on my chest. The Navy insignia faded at the edges from too many double shifts. The door at the end of the corridor bore the new brass plate. Director COL Robert Hale, USMC Ret. I was supposed to brief him on surgical staffing shortages, but there was a rumor about this man that he'd run a combat hospital like a warship. No excuses, no late reports. I'd already rehearsed a dozen ways to say we're underfunded without sounding like I was making excuses. I knocked once. "Enter," came the voice. The office smelled of leather, gun oil, and coffee strong enough to corrode a spoon. Behind the desk sat a man with shoulders like a sandbag wall and eyes that had seen both miracles and mortars. His Marine jacket was draped over the back of his chair, sleeves creased like folded flags. He looked up from his file. "Lieutenant Commander Wallace?" "Yes, sir." He closed the folder. "I owe you one." I frowned before I could hide it. "Sir?" He slid a diner receipt across the desk. Faded ink, coffee stain near the bottom, total, $12.48. My signature, scrawled in the tip line. It hit me like déjà vu. The dusty roadside diner outside Norfolk, a spring rain, a Marine jacket with frayed cuffs, a declined card, and a weary man pretending not to notice. I'd paid for the meal and left before he could object. It was instinct, not charity. The kind of thing you do and forget because it's supposed to disappear. "You were the one?" I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah, you left before I could thank you." "I didn't do it for thanks, Colonel." His smile was small but real. "Exactly why I wanted you here." That was how I met my new director, the stranger whose meal I'd paid for. He gestured to the chair. "Sit. We've got a hospital to fix." The flag behind him leaned slightly from the vent's draft, catching the light in lazy, dignified waves. I sat, aware of the shift in air pressure that happens when fate changes direction, but pretends it's coincidence. "Tell me what's broken," he said. "How long have you got?" "As long as it takes." I laid it out. Outdated supply systems, vanishing prosthetics orders, phantom vendors charging full rates for equipment that never arrived, nurses pulling double shifts without overtime, patients waiting 90 days for appointments, bureaucracy as a form of quiet euthanasia. He didn't take notes. He just listened, finger steepled, jaw flexing once every few sentences. When I finished, he said, "That's not neglect. That's a siege." I nodded. "Feels that way most days." "Good," he said. "Then you already know what kind of war we're in." He stood, went to the window, and looked out toward the hospital's aging courtyard where the flagpole leaned a few degrees left. "You lost someone to this place." I hesitated. "My father, Vietnam vet, died waiting for a bed that never opened." He didn't turn around. "I lost a few under my command because Washington forgot their names. Same disease, different uniforms." The air in the room grew heavy but not hopeless, the kind of silence that respects the dead. When he turned back, his eyes had softened just enough to make the Marine in him look human. "Let's make sure no one else dies of paperwork," he said. I nodded. "Aye, sir." He held up the receipt again. "This was a small thing, but you treated me like I mattered before you knew who I was. That's leadership. That's what we'll build here." He set it on his desk like an oath. "Keep it. You'll know when to pass it on." The receipt was brittle with grease, but I folded it into my breast pocket like a medal that didn't need ceremony. Weeks passed in the gray rhythm of hospital life, the beep of monitors, the smell of sanitizer, the echo of boots on linoleum at 3 a.m. I learned the staff's names, the veterans' stories, and the specific tone of sigh that meant someone's patients had died before their body. I also learned that kindness in places like this was treated like contraband, smuggled in, passed quietly from hand to hand. My team knew I paid for the occasional cafeteria meal for the ones short on benefits. They knew I sat with a dying man when his family didn't come. They teased, but gently. "St. Wallace," they called me. I laughed it off. I wasn't a saint. Saints don't clock in. At night, I wrote names in a small notebook. Those who lived, those who didn't. Sometimes I added a note. Spoke about the dog, asked for black coffee. Small things that kept them from becoming numbers. Then one morning, I found a note taped to my locker. Staff meeting, Eero 800. Director Hale, attendance mandatory. By 7:59, the conference room was packed. Nurses, techs, clerks, all smelling of coffee and nerves. Hale stood at the front, jacket on this time, ribbons gleaming faintly under the fluorescent glare. Some of you know me as the new boss, he began. But before that, I was the man sitting in a diner with a card that didn't work. A stranger paid for my meal. That stranger works here. Heads turned. I stayed still. He went on. That act reminded me that honor doesn't die when the uniform comes off. It's carried, lived, shared. He paused. We're going to bring that spirit back to this place. One meal, one patient, one reform at a time. Applause started hesitantly, then built. As the noise rose, I touched the folded receipt in my pocket and realized this was what service looked like when the gunfire stopped but the war didn't. And somewhere inside the applause, I heard the quiet echo of my father's voice. Do the small thing right. The big things will follow. The flag outside whipped against the sky like it had been listening. The hospital PA crackled with a code, blew 2 floors up. The war went on. Different weapons, same stakes. And I was ready for the next battle. Some wounds didn't bleed. They ticked. When the hospital quieted, a thin hour before sunrise, when the vents hummed like distant surf, I'd step into the stairwell and let the concrete cool the heat in my chest. My father had died in a waiting room with a dead fern and a TV tuned to a channel that called his war vintage footage. The brochure in his pocket said, "We care." Paper lies softly. His name still felt heavy in my mouth, a fist that wouldn't unclench. I finished that memory the way I always did. Thumb on the edge of my badge until plastic bit skin, a self-issued order to re-enter the fight. Then I walked the wards. Monitors clicked their slow metronome. The antiseptic tang held a citrus note that never belonged to fruit. A marine jacket hung on the back of a chair in 4B. Its owner, Sergeant Tom Riley, slept open-mouthed after a night of phantom limb pain. I tucked the jacket's cuff so it wouldn't drag, then checked the prosthetics request pinned to his file. 90 days pending. The number looked like a dare. Downstairs, a laminated poster on a corkboard promised reforms underway. The tape corners had curled. Dust lived behind the plastic. Rumor said the new director would tear out rot with his bare hands. Rumor also said the rot wore a lanyard and drank conference coffee. I'd met both types. The catalyst showed up as a stack of trays. Kitchen sent up 11, Nurse Carol said, shoulders square but tired. We ordered 15. I counted. 11. Names missing. A Purple Heart who never asked for seconds. A quiet corpsman who gave his dessert away. I felt heat rise, then flatten out. I set the meal receipt from my pocket under a magnet on the med locker, a reminder from an old diner that hunger has witnesses. Who signed the requisition? I asked. Linda, Carol said. As always. Administrator Linda Pratt wore perfume that smelled like powdered sugar, and the word no. She ran procurement like a drawbridge, up when needed most. I took the elevator, doors sliding with a tired wheeze, and walked toward administration under ceiling tiles that trembled to the beat of a bad fan. Her office sounded carpeted even before I stepped in. A tiny fountain gurgled on the credenza, an indoor brook for people who objected to rivers. The blinds threw zebra stripes across a hospital plaque that read, "Excellence in Cost Efficiency." The brass plate shone, the letters didn't. 11 trays, I said. Linda looked over reading glasses that did not need to be worn. They were a signal. Dietary adjusted for waste reduction. These aren't numbers, Otti said. They're names. She smiled in a way that made the fountain sound louder. Names come with budgets, Lieutenant Commander. Be grateful, this was a pilot success. Pilot for what? For spending like we mean it. She rippled a paper, projection charts, smooth as lies. 2% savings in 1 week. My jaw clicked. I made it unclench. Return the 4 trays today. She turned back to her screen. The cursor blinked like a bored eye. Submit a form. I left her office with the smell of powdered sugar stuck to my palate and walked past the hospital plaque again. Someone had buffed it too hard. The metal smelled like heat. I set my fingers on the nameplate and wiped a faint smear away with my sleeve, as if cleaning truth could be that easy. The first mini-turn came on shift change. An orderly rolled a crate past supply. The lid shivered, exposing white boxes stamped with a vendor I didn't recognize. MedPath Solutions. The labels were too neat. I lifted one. It was light as air and full as nothing. Saline? No. Boxes stuffed with packing foam and a thin sleeve of tubing. Phantom inventory. Real invoices. New vendor? I asked. The orderly shrugged. Linda's list. I signed for the crate, walked it to the slop sink, slit one box with a pocket blade. Foam breathed out. A hollow sigh. I snapped a photo. The sink smelled like bleach and honest work. I preferred that. Jacob Pierce found me 10 minutes later by the copier, his tie a shade of optimism no one else wore. IT clerk, unremarkable on paper. Eyes that knew where bodies rested in databases. You asked about MedPath, he said, voice low. The domain's registered to a P.O. box near the river. No building. The invoices route through a shell. Who's the shell? He looked at the ceiling, not the cameras. Chief accountant with Linda's initials on approvals. Show me. He didn't, not in the open. He slid a folded printout into my palm like contraband. It smelled faintly of toner and fear. Careful, he said. They suspend people for less. They also feed people less, I said, and slid the paper into my pocket behind the diner receipt. Paper against paper, debt against debt. I brought the crate to Hale's office. The marine jacket still hung from his chair, the sleeve crease a straight line like an ironed promise. He listened while I spoke. He didn't interrupt when I slid a second box and let the foam puff under his nose. He touched the fake tubing with a knuckle, then wiped that knuckle on a handkerchief. Where's the invoice trail? He asked. In your email in 5 minutes, I said. Good, he said. I prefer fax. He tapped the diner receipt on his desk, then the hospital plaque on his wall, one he'd already turned face down. We bring this building back to its purpose, or we rip out the rot. But we do it by the book so the book finally means something. Copy, I said. He pointed to a shadow on his window where the flag outside flicked in wind. And Lieutenant Commander, no cowboy runs. We move together. I nod, left, and moved anyway, together, with Jacob, with Carol, with the quiet chain of hands that still believed hospitals were supposed to heal. We ran a map. Jacob pulled delivery logs, timestamps, badge swipes, IP pings. Carol gathered patient names and the exact moment a meal failed to arrive. I contacted Sergeant Riley's prosthetic supplier on my lunch break while chewing a sandwich that tasted like cardboard in victory. Their rep, a voice made of shrugging, said the order had been rerouted to a preferred partner. When I asked who, he put me on hold, long enough for me to hear an entire instrumental cover of a patriotic song. When he came back, he didn't have an answer. The second mini-turn hit at 0200. A code gray, missing patient, blared soft through the PA. We found him in the memorial garden, sitting on a bench beneath the bronze plaque listing names of donors and dead. The garden smelled like wet mulch and flag rope. He had a cafeteria fork in his hand and a letter in his lap. Can't sleep, he said. Feels like someone's borrowing my time. I sat beside him. He handed me the letter with a shaky finger. Your prosthetic has been delayed due to processing. No name, no signature. Bureaucracy rarely risks handwriting. I folded the letter once and slid it into my breast pocket with the receipt and the printout. Metal from my challenge coin pressed against them like a steady thumb. You're not borrowed, I said. You're paid for. He stared at the flag, then at the dark windows of administration. By who? By whoever refuses to leave you behind, I said. Back inside, I passed Linda in the hall. She carried a file folder like a trophy. The powdered sugar smell preceded her like fog. Late night, she said. The best work usually is, and I said. She tilted her head. listening for insubordination like a bat hearing ultrasound. Don't overstep, Lieutenant Commander. People like you burn out. People like me light things, I said, and kept moving. Hale called a Yo700 huddle. The conference room's coffee tasted like pennies. The flag in the corner needed mending on the hem. He laid out 3 steps with marine brevity: freeze MedPath payments, audit meal orders, lock chain of custody for prosthetics. Pushback? I asked. Count on it, he said. We move slow enough to be legal and fast enough to be moral. He assigned me point on prosthetics. Carol took dietary. Jacob ran a silent scrape of Linda's approval cue with a script that chirped like a small bird when it found duplicates. The bird didn't stop chirping. By noon, procurement misplaced my badge access to supply. By 1300, my login rejected in accounts payable. By 1500, a memo arrived in my inbox citing scope creep and protocol deviation. The font tried to be friendly. The subtext sharpened its teeth. I printed the memo. The toner's chemical tang stung my nose. I stapled it to the fake inventory photo, slid both into a clear sleeve, and walked them to Hale. He read, said nothing, then placed the diner receipt on top of the stack and squared the corners. We keep going, he said, voice a half octave lower. If they swing, we clinch. If they clinch, we break. Roger. In the hall, the indoor fountain in administration burbled on. I imagined its pump choking on the truth. That night, I took my notebook to the memorial garden. The wind gave the flag a single clean snap. I wrote names and dates and tasks, and in the margin I wrote debt, dignity, deliver. The bench was cold through my scrubs. The bronze plaque under my palm held the day's warmth. I pressed my challenge coin against it until metal met metal, and some stubborn part of me believed heat transfers both ways. When I stood to go in, a security light clicked on, bleaching the path. A shadow detached from the far hedge. Jacob, hoodie up, phone glowing. Got it, he whispered, offering the screen. Vendor records, shell company paperwork, an approval stamp with Linda's login at 0211 on a Sunday. Chain it, I said. 2 backups. Offsite. Already done. The PA crackled with a tone I knew too well. Administration broadcast. A flat voice announced, effective immediately, Lieutenant Commander Anna Wallace is suspended pending review. The wind tugged the flag rope. Metal ticked against the pole like a metronome. I slipped the diner receipt from my pocket and felt its grease-soft paper bow under my thumb. I wasn't surprised by the hit. I was surprised by how steady my pulse sounded in my ears when the war came out from behind the desk and showed its badge. Suspended. The word landed like a rubber stamp on the inside of my skull. Flat, indelible. The PA's tone faded. The flag rope outside ticked against the pole in metronome pity. In my pocket, the diner receipt softened with sweat. Paper remembers. I walked, didn't run, back through the sliding doors. Antiseptic and floor wax braided into a smell that had become my weather. A junior nurse glanced up, eyes wide, then returned to charting. Survival is attention triage. I handed Carol my badge without drama. The plastic thudded on her palm, a small surrender. Appeal it, she whispered. Win it, I said. My locker door groaned when I opened it. Metal fatigue always sounds like honesty. I pulled my hospital jacket free, navy patch fraying at the edge, pockets full of pens and gum wrappers like confetti from a parade no one threw. I hung it on the hook like a folded flag. Hale's office door was shut. I felt the knot in the wood grain under my knuckles before I knocked. Enter. He stood behind the desk, jacket on, jaw set, a vein lifting in his temple with each heartbeat. The room smelled like black coffee threatening to boil. He held my suspension memo between 2 fingers as if it were biohazard. They'll go after me next, he said. They should, I answered. I'm small. You're sharp, he said. Sharp gets blamed for cuts. I slid the photo of the foam-packed boxes onto his desk. He slid it back. Keep your evidence, he said. They'll lock my drawers. Then we move outside, I said. He exhaled through his nose, a Marine's version of a laugh. Good. Board meets Friday. They think this suspension thins our line. Lines hold, I said. He lifted a hand toward the wall where the hospital plaque he'd turned face down lay like a tombstone in denial. They bought their excellence with empty. We'll make them read it upright. We moved. Jacob slid into the stairwell with the careful energy of a field tech defusing, hoodie zipped, laptop hugged tight. The stairwell smelled like concrete and mop water. Our voices fell to dust there. Server mirror complete, he said. 2 drives off-site. Chain? I asked. He tapped his temple. Hash signed, time stamped. I passed him the diner receipt. He blinked. Why me? Because debts multiply, I said. Guard it till the hearing. He tucked it into an inner pocket behind his ID, a private pact. I won't lose it. You won't, I said, and believed it. Mini-turn. Procurement locked the supply cage. A padlock snapped shut with theatrical finality. The click echoed down the hall like a judge with bad timing. I didn't rattle it. I photographed it. Lock, date, time, my watch face reflecting the fluorescent stutter. Carol drifted up beside me with a clipboard of missing meal tickets. 4 names in neat print. Ink, a small defiance. Meals restored? I asked. For now, she said, but they'll starve by spreadsheet again. Then we feed them by hand, I said. We did. Trays rerouted. Extras scraped together with the quiet ferocity of nurses who'd seen wars and school board meetings and knew which was worse. Bread rolls halved, soup stretched. The kitchen smelled like onions and apology. I carried a tray to Sergeant Riley. Steam fogged my glasses. His room held the twin smells of antiseptic and wool. He grinned without moving his stump. They benched you? He asked. Temporarily, but I said, eat. He tore bread with his left hand, chewed labor into calm. I'll testify, he said, crumbs at the corner of his mouth. You'll heal, I said. Save your breath. His eyes flicked to my chest. Coin on you. I tapped the pocket. The challenge coin's edge pressed a circle into my skin, cold, then warm. Always. Good, he said. That's our flag when there isn't one. By dusk, emails bled excuses. Transition audit. Policy review. Best practices alignment. Bureaucracy varnished its batons for tomorrow. I walked out to the memorial garden to cool my rage in the fountain's thin breath and the soil's old patience. The bronze plaque listed donors and dead. My father's name wasn't there. He'd paid in waiting. Hale found me there, his footfalls even on the gravel. The garden smelled like mulch and rain caught in leaves. He sat without grunting, which is another kind of discipline. They'll try to keep me from the hearing, he said. Can they? I asked. They can try. He paused, fingers on his knee, a drummer feeling for tempo. My heart's not the best they've seen, he said. Case they play dirty, you carry the line. I kept my eyes on the flag. We carry it together. He nodded, satisfied by the pronoun. He set something between us on the bench, a coin, darkened, edges nicked, eagle globe anchor rising like a bruise. For luck, he said. I prefer chain of custody, I said. Luck is for civilians, he said, almost smiling. Keep it anyway. The coin was heavier than mine, its ridges biting into my palm, leaving a perfect circle of ache. I slipped it into my pocket with my own coin. Metal kissed metal, a quiet, necessary ceremony. The next morning broke gray and smelled like wet flag rope. I was locked out of my email and into my purpose. Jacob texted a single word, boardroom. We met in the copy room where the toner coated the air like bitter snow. He spread printouts, routing slips, MedPath deposit trails, Sunday approvals that moved money faster than any ambulance. Linda signs everything, he said. Chief accountant countersigns. They split vendor codes to dodge thresholds. How much? I asked. Enough to buy a wing, he said. They bought a fountain. We built a wall of evidence. Timeline in black ink, photos clipped on with binder teeth, a map from purchase orders to nothing. Carol added dietary deltas, each missing tray a red circle you could put your thumb in. Sergeant Riley, on paper and with dignity, wrote a statement that smelled like truth. I did not have a leg, I did not have a meal. Mini-turn. Security approached. 2 guards, polite faces, the smell of shoe polish, names sewn on like apologies. Director needs you both downstairs. One said, Not a request. Hale waited in his office, jacket already on his shoulders, tie knotted into compliance. He looked thinner around the eyes, the kind of gray that hangs around men who refuse to lie down. He gestured to the chair. I stood anyway. They moved the hearing up, he said. Now. Good, I said. He slid a folder across. Inside, his prepared remarks, dense as sandbags. He'd scripted a strike. Facts, victims, money trails, names. At the end, a single line handwritten. We are not accountants of mercy. We are its stewards. Sir? I started. Don't sir me, he said, gentle. Walk with me. We walked. The hallway smelled like floor polish and fear. Staff lined the walls with the studied pretense of busyness people wear when history shuffles past. Linda appeared at the far end, perfume announcing her before the heels did. She smiled, sugar over solvent. Colonel, she said, not appropriate to attend. Try me, he said. Her eyes snapped to me. Suspended staff may not enter. I met her gaze for 1 second longer than policy allows. Then watch closely, I said. The boardroom doors swung open on hinges that whined like conscience. Inside, the air was climate-controlled to neutralize human heat. Glass pitchers beaded cold on a side table. The board's packets sat aligned like tombstones. A hospital plaque hung centered on the far wall. Excellence in cost efficiency. This one upright, unforgivable. Hale stepped to the head of the table without waiting to be invited. The board members rustled. Their pens clicked in defensive choreography. A stenographer's machine clattered like small rain. I took a seat against the back wall. Suspension a technicality if you sat quiet enough, Linda began. We value transparency. Unfortunately, certain staff have violated. Hale's fist landed flat. No slam, just presence. The water in the pitcher shivered. Enough. Her mouth pinched small. Out of order. He didn't look at her. He looked at the board, each face filed as if for court-martial. You have been robbed, he said. No preface, no warm-up. He laid the foam-filled tubing on the tablecloth. It squeaked against linen, a sad little whine. He laid invoices, timelines, initials. He laid Sergeant Riley's statement on top, last and largest. The room smelled faintly of wet paper and panic. A murmur wove through the panel, the sound of reputations calculating. The chief accountant's pen skittered, then stilled. He dabbed sweat at his collar with a handkerchief that was too white for the moment. Hale's color rose, a flush crawling up his neck. He drew a breath and coughed once, the sound low, wet, not a good cough. His hand braced on the table's edge, the wood creaked. For a beat, his eyes went unfocused. Then he found me at the back wall and nodded. A small private order passed across a crowded room. I stood, suspension be damned, and set Jacob's mirrored drive on the table like a chalice. It clicked on, a tiny blue LED blinking alive. Jacob plugged a cable into the board's monitor. The screen glowed with a directory of fraud. Hashes scrolled, timestamps blazed. The light painted everyone's faces a sick aquarium blue. Chain verified, Jacob said, voice steady. I pointed once. Index finger, not a speech. Shell company, Sunday approvals. Phantom inventory, missing meals, delayed prosthetics, names, amounts, locations. Linda tried one last line, 8 words, brittle as spun sugar. This is a misunderstanding of complex workflows. Hale didn't give me a cue. He didn't need to. I set my challenge coin on the table, its metal ring crisp. It's theft, I said. The chief accountant sagged, then slid into silence. Hale's hand went to his chest, 2 fingers pressed near the pocket where his own coin lived. His breath shortened, a man running uphill in a room without hills. He didn't sit. He picked up the hospital plaque from the wall, excellence in cost efficiency, turned it, looked at his reflection, then faced the board with it like a shield turned honest. We honor the living with what we do, he said, voice hoarse, not what we save. The room tilted toward decision. Papers shuffled. A gavel someone always keeps near for comfort found purpose and landed once, twice. Security moved toward Linda. The chief accountant's chair scraped backward. The sound of a chapter closing. Hale's knuckles went white on the plaque's edge. Sweat beaded at his hairline. He smiled at me then, the kind of smile men wear when the mission is finally fully in motion. "Finish it," he mouthed. I nodded, felt both coins burn cool in my pocket, and stepped to the table as the board's chair turned to me and said, with the dry authority of someone catching up to truth, "Lieutenant Commander Wallace, proceed." The boardroom went still. The kind of still where the hum of fluorescent lights sounds like artillery in the distance. Hale's hand trembled against the plaque. The brass caught the reflection of every stunned face in the room. I stepped forward. The projector's glow painted my uniform in cold light. Jacob's screen pulsed with lines of proof that no one could now deny. My heart didn't race. It measured. Precision. That's what years of triage does to a person. Every missing dollar, I said, my voice even, meant a veteran waited another day for a leg. Every phantom invoice was a soldier eating powdered soup instead of a real meal. Every signature you ignored was a life you gambled. Silence hit like recoil. The board members tried not to blink. Linda Pratt, the queen of powdered sugar and falsified comfort, stood frozen with her mouth half open, mid-script. Her pen clutched like a blade that had just turned on her. Hale's voice came rough. Gravel dragged through pain. "Lieutenant Commander Wallace, show them the final number." I looked at Jacob. He clicked a key. The screen filled with the total, 8,712 to 709.36. Money meant for prosthetics, care units, veteran housing, all siphoned into fake vendors. Gasps rippled through the board like a chain of detonations. A few members looked ill. 8 million, Hale said, each syllable deliberate. That's not inefficiency. That's betrayal. He coughed, low, deep, wet, and pressed his palm to his chest. Carol rushed forward from the doorway with a stethoscope already swinging from her neck, but he waved her off. "Not yet," he said. "Let me finish." Linda broke the silence with a voice trembling from fear disguised as fury. This is outrageous. You think you can waltz in here with theatrics?" Her sentence died when Hale slapped the plaque flat on the table, its metallic crack snapping the room into obedience. "I bled for this country," he said. "So do these men and women. You steal from them, you steal from every inch of that flag outside." The flag, visible through the window, flinched once in the wind like it had hurt him. The head of the board cleared his throat. "Colonel Hale, the evidence appears clear." "Not appears," I cut in, voice sharp as a blade drawn fast. "Is?" Every word landed. The silence after was a clean wound. Security entered. 2 guards, quiet, efficient. Linda's defiance crumbled. Her file folder fell, papers fanning out across the carpet like a confession. Hale leaned heavier on the table, knuckles white, plaque slipping from his grasp. I moved to catch it, but he caught my wrist first. His grip still had the strength of command. "Don't let them forget," he whispered. Then his hand fell. The plaque struck the floor with a dull, metallic cry. "Call emergency," Carol said, already moving. Chaos unfolded with the precise rhythm of disaster. Jacob cleared cables. I knelt beside Hale, his pulse erratic under my fingertips, his breath rattling through the canyon of his chest. He looked at me through the fog of fading strength. "We did it," he murmured. "Yes, sir," I said. "We did." His hand twitched once, found his coin, pressed it into my palm. Then the tension drained out of him. The kind of peace that looks like discipline finally given permission to rest. The medics arrived, too late to change the outcome, but not too late to bear witness. The stretcher wheels squeaked against tile. The oxygen hissed a useless hymn. Linda's voice came faint from the hall. This can't." Jacob turned to her. "It's over." Outside. The flag rose on a gust of wind and snapped clean against the pole. Everyone inside flinched at the sound. "Stand." No one ordered it, but they did. Board members, nurses, janitors, security. Every person in that room rose to their feet. Silence carried more respect than any anthem could. Hale's stretcher rolled past, draped with the Marine jacket from his chair. The plaque followed, carried in my hands, its inscription catching a tear of sunlight from the window. When the door shut behind him, the sound of the latch felt like a salute. Days blurred. Investigations launched. Pratt's empire collapsed like wet sand. Her mugshot appeared online. Eyes wide, dignity gone. The accountant turned state's witness within hours. Audits flooded through departments like light under a door. The VA suspended operations for internal review, but the patients never stopped arriving, and neither did we. Carol ran triage. Jacob cleaned code. I worked from borrowed terminals under consulting status, technically outside the rules, practically holding the whole machine together. When the Justice Department came, they used Hale's files as gospel. I gave them everything, every folder, every timestamp, every email. The prosecutor asked, "Do you know how long this will take?" "As long as it took him to die," I said. He didn't have an answer. The memorial service filled the hospital courtyard. The flagpole was straight now. Jacob and I had fixed it ourselves. The sky above was an honest blue, wind sharp enough to sting, but clean. The Marine Corps Honor Guard stood at attention, their boots carving neat geometry into the damp ground. The smell of brass polish mixed with pine mulch and hospital sanitizer, a strange, perfect blend of life and discipline. A small podium waited. My name was on the program as guest speaker, but it might as well have read witness. When it was my turn, I stepped forward. The microphone crackled, then settled. Colonel Robert Hale, I began, wasn't the kind of man who liked speeches. He believed in facts, in duty, and in doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. He died doing what every Marine hopes for, to protect others. I paused, eyes on the folded flag on the casket. He told me once that kindness is the rarest kind of courage. I didn't understand it then. I do now. I reached into my pocket and held up the diner receipt. This was our beginning. One small act between strangers. It bought more than a meal. It bought reform, justice, and dignity. The crowd stirred, a ripple through uniforms and civilians alike. I placed the receipt atop the flag. The debts that matter aren't paid in dollars, but dignity. I saluted. Others followed. Then came the sound of 21 rifles, crisp and final, the air breaking clean around each echo. The last shot rolled through the courtyard and seemed to hang there, refusing to leave. Carol's voice cracked behind me, whispering to no one and everyone. He fixed it. And for once, no one corrected her. After the funeral, I walked alone to the memorial garden. The benches gleamed from morning dew, and Hale's name was already carved on a bronze plate newly mounted beneath the old donor list. COL, Robert Hale. Honor is action. I set the Marine Challenge coin beside it. The metal clicked softly on bronze. A nurse passing by stopped, bowed her head, and moved on. The gesture needed no words. Above, the flag moved just once in the still air, as if agreeing. When I turned to leave, Jacob was waiting by the path. "The board voted," he said. "New name's official." I looked back at the hospital, sunlight glinting off the freshly mounted letters. Hale Veterans Center. It looked right. He smiled faintly. "They're offering you the director's seat." I shook my head. "That seat's taken forever." He nodded. "So what'll you do?" I glanced at the sky, the flag, the plaque, the path that led back to the wards where patients still waited. "Serve anyway," I said. Jacob laughed quietly. "Even if no one's watching?" "Especially then." We walked back toward the hospital in step. The smell of coffee drifted from the canteen, mingling with the salt of the wind. Somewhere deep inside, I heard Hale's voice again, steady as command, softer than regret. "Keep the lights on, Wallace." And I did. The hospital wore its new name like a healed scar, visible, honest, earned. Letters in brushed steel caught the morning, Hale Veterans Center. The sign smelled faintly of machine oil the first week, then of rain and hot brick, the way buildings smell when they decide to live. I kept my old badge with a sticker over the title. Acting clinical ops? Nothing fancy. Each shift, before the first meds and the first chart, I cut through the memorial garden. Dew jeweled the hedges. The bronze plate with his name kept the nights cool. I tapped it twice with my knuckle, then set my challenge coin against the edge so metal kissed metal. "Morning, Colonel," I'd say. The flag beside the bench answered with one soft stir, then settled, as if we'd agreed on the day's terms. Work changed, then hardened into routine again, the good kind. Carol's board and dietary filled in green. No more red circles for missing trays. Sergeant Riley rolled down 4B with a new carbon fiber limb that clicked precisely on tile. He saluted me without stopping. I saluted back, a pocketed gesture between equals. The first letter came on plain stationery, a pen pressed hard enough to bruise the paper fibers. The return address wore a rural route and a lavender stamp. I opened it at my locker, the room smelling of cotton scrubs and coffee that had given up. Lit CMD Char Wallace. You don't know me. I'm the daughter of Henry Voss in Ward 3. He used to say the VA forgot his name. He doesn't say that anymore. You sat with him one night when he couldn't breathe and told him he matters. You found him a bed without asking permission from the wrong people. He died with dignity last week. You gave my father back to me, even if only for a while. Thank you. Marie. I folded the letter once, then again, and slid it behind Hale's diner receipt in my breast pocket. Paper against paper, debt against debt, kindness layered the way armor used to be. I read the letter twice more, then put it in the small journal where I wrote names and small notes that keep the dead standing up inside me. The keynote invite for the National VA Conference came next. Thick envelope, embossed seal, words that smelled like hotels. I said yes because Hale would have. The hall in D.C. had the air of 100 panels gone stale, projectors breathing, carpet keeping secrets, a flag big enough to be a wall. I stood at a clear podium that looked like it might break under the weight of truth. I placed his challenge coin beside the mic and the diner receipt under my notes. The PA tested a tone that vibrated my ribs. The audience settled into rows, administrators, nurses, a few politicians who wore respect like a coat they hadn't paid for. I told them the story of a meal that cost $12 and changed the price of justice. I told them about phantom invoices and real hunger, about a Marine who died, standing in front of a board and turning a plaque until it reflected the right face back. I kept it spare. Words must carry patience, not pose for photographs. Kindness isn't weakness, Corinne said. It's the first step toward justice. The line didn't make them cheer, it made them stand. A soft, deliberate rising, cloth whispering, program sliding, people remembering they had legs made for more than desks. Some put hands over hearts, some didn't. The flag moved because the HVAC made it, but it looked like agreement. After, a dozen hands squeezed mine. A few eyes carried water not meant for TV. A nurse from El Paso pressed a coin into my palm. Another circle of metal, different unit, same promise. I added it to my pocket, the weight familiar now, like pockets were made for vows. Back home, the diner still wore its chipped formica with pride. The bell over the door gave its small broken jingle. The air tasted like bacon and old coffee, which is to say, America trying. The stool where I'd first seen him, Marine jacket, card declined, pride intact, sat open like a chapter. I ordered eggs and left the stool empty. When I paid, I folded 2 20s under the signed slip and asked the cashier to keep a tab. Next veteran who eats alone. Quietly. She nodded, eyes finding the badge on my belt, the coins in my hand, the story in the room that didn't need telling. On my way out, the bell failed to jingle and made a soft clank instead. The door stuck for a heartbeat, it always did in spring, and then let me go. The hospital's lobby smelled different after reforms. Less lemon covering rot, more clean because it was a new plaque hung opposite the old brass lie. Hale Veterans Center, honor is action. I checked it once a week for fingerprints and wiped them with the edge of a sleeve, the way you clean a photo of someone you miss. Jacob learned to sleep again. I could tell by the way his jokes came back. Quick, dry, not barbed. Carol ran an in-service on dignity and dietary, PowerPoints without bullets, just names of men and women and what they liked to eat. Riley, extra butter, the slide read. He laughed out loud and asked for 2 rolls. She gave him 3. One evening, as the sun slanted through the glass atrium and made the terrazzo floor a river of gold, I found a small velvet pouch tucked into the alcove by the memorial garden. Inside, the marine coin I'd left by Hale's plate, polished and engraved on the rim. 4 words, new cut, oil still threading the grooves. Keep the lights on, no signature. I didn't need one. I set the coin against his plate. The metal chimed. The flag snapped once in the courtyard wind. A single syllable that sounded exactly like a promise. Not every letter came with gratitude. One had grief edged with anger. Why didn't this happen sooner? I didn't answer with policy or excuses. I wrote back what the truth could carry. We failed him before we found you. We will not fail the next. I added a private note. His name is written now where it can't be lost. I mailed it with a stamp that showed a flag in a storm pretending not to be in one. The hospital's night shift took to placing a fresh cup of coffee by the memorial plate at 2300, a ritual with no committee, no budget, no email. The cup steamed into the dark, smelling like early mornings and resolved arguments. The janitor took it at 0200 and said, "He's done now," to no one. We all knew. On my last night before a rare weekend off, the sky went copper at the edges. The flag threw a long shadow that reached the garden bench like a hand. I walked the perimeter of the building once, then again, boots measuring the seam where brick met soil. I passed the canteen. Someone laughed, good and unashamed, and the supply cage, new lock, clear log, weight of accountability you can lift with your eyes. At the back service door, I checked the light. It hummed steady. Moths made frantic lace against the lens, and then learned the pattern of it. Inside the stairwell, concrete held chill even in July. I ran my palm along the cinder block on the way up, grounding electricity to stone. Before heading out, I cut through the memorial garden one last time. The plate was warm from the day, cool at the edges where the shadow had settled. I pressed the diner receipt flat under my palm and felt grease-slick fibers resist then yield. A horn honked on the distant road, a dog barked twice, then forgave the night. "I'll bring breakfast," I said to the air. The air, for once, said nothing back. That felt right. The next morning, I was back at the diner with 2 paper sacks, coffee to go, hash browns sweating through wax. The cashier grinned. "Tab's already been used," she whispered. "Vietnam vet, left a note for the next one." She slid it across. "You saved more than you knew. No name, no flourish." The loop closed itself without asking for applause. At shift change, I set 1 sack by the memorial plate and 1 by the night nurse station. Carol took hers with a wink. I tapped the plate twice. The coin on the rim winked back. The day moved. It always does. We rounded. We replaced dressings. We signed orders that meant something now. I corrected a form with a red pen and a small satisfaction that felt like mercy wearing boots. In 4B, Riley practiced stares with a therapist who refused to count for him. He cursed once, then laughed. When the sun went down, I paused in the doorway of the director's office. Still his name on the plate will be forever. The marine jacket we'd draped over his casket hung now in a shadow box on the wall, sleeves smooth, collar proud. I placed my palm on the glass. It was cool and clean. My reflection wore a tired face and a steady spine. I didn't say goodbye when I left that night. I said the only line that mattered anymore. Lights are on. The flag outside answered with a whisper. The hospital hummed low, a ship underway, and I walked into the dusk with pockets heavy from coins and letters and a single, grease-stained receipt that refused to disintegrate. Some debts keep you honest. Some debts build a world. If you believe quiet acts rebuild the world, subscribe for real stories about gratitude, service, silent bonds, and true justice.